Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, Paranormal Geeks. This is Jim Heater. This is also February 12th, 2013. I'm glad you're listening to the show instead of the State of the Union, which I shouldn't have told you it just started. No, I'm glad I did, because you'll stay on here and have fun instead of listening to that and get bored and upset. So welcome to the show tonight. Tonight we have a very, very interesting guest. She's a very respected psychic medium raised in Pennsylvania. She also served a little bit of time as being an actress, both on stage and on the silver screen. And she left being an actress to become internet. Let's see. I'm gonna have to read this because I forgot it. International intuitive medium and transformational spiritual life coach. She is also the psychic medium expert for Whitley Strieber's radio webcast Dreamland. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to the show a true paranormal geek, Miss Marla Frees. Marla, you on the
Hi, Jim. That's great. I love that. Yes, and I'd like all of us right now to embrace that geeky part of us. You know, you mentioned being from Pennsylvania, and I've come a long way from in my exploration of geekdom, and I just want to share with our listeners that I may have seemed popular, but I really wasn't. Like when I was in 12th grade, and it was the homecoming dance. Even though I was head majorette, I didn't have a date, so I basically had to pay a ninth grader to go with me. He was a hot football star, but so we all have our levels of geekdom, Jim.
Yes, well, I know. Mine started early, and I haven't lost it yet, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, but did you have to go out with a ninth grader to make yourself look good?
A ninth grade boy? No, I never did.
A ninth grade. Well, thank you for inviting me. And there's so many things that you and I that we want to talk about. So let's get right to it.
Okay. Well, first, I want to say, if you don't mind me saying this, the last time I talked to you, we were just barely on the air. You said, "Jim, I need to tell you something." Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yes.
You didn't get anything on me tonight, did you?
Well, that's funny. No. I have a really good boundary about that, and I think that this might help some of our listeners too. At least this is just about me. I'm not sure about other psychics or mediums, but I have a boundary that when I am working, I'm working, and when I'm not, I'm not. And when I have to do a lot of phone calls, whether it's talking to business associates, it's a choice for me to open myself up and receive information. And when you and I talked earlier today, I was not working. We were just talking about some of the elements about some of what we're going to talk about on the show. Right. I'm very, very clear to keep that switch on and turn it off when not necessary. However, there are times when the dead just won't leave me alone. And psychic information can come in at any time. The divine can give me pieces of information about all sorts of things. But I basically have a good radar on that, and I can flip that switch or not. But sometimes the dead will put me in situations that, whether I'm stuck in a cab, whether I'm in an airport sitting beside somebody and I am pressed to tell somebody something. And what recently happened was having a few friends at dinner and at a Chinese restaurant, and after dinner there was information that was pressed upon me that I had to share with the man who was with me at that dinner table. His mother and father both came in. So I didn't anticipate that. He didn't either. That wasn't something that was on my mind, but those things actually do happen.
Oh, very cool. Well, it can be.
Well, yeah, I think that a lot of our listeners are having synchronistic experiences. I know that some people that are listening are also very gifted and intuitive, and the veil is much thinner between the living and the dead now. I think with shows like Medium and Touched by an Angel that was on a number of years ago, and also the Long Island Medium, there is this idea that information in various forms comes to us to help us, and that's why I do this work.
Very cool. Well, I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, but since the last time we talked, I've had some things happen to me that kind of put me in a different way of thinking, I guess. Looking at there was a page on Facebook where they kind of did cold cases. Some other psychics would look at pictures and see what they would get. Mm-hmm. And one night I happened to flip over to that page and I saw a face, and I started rambling things off to a person that I was messaging on Facebook. And she was telling me, put them on the page. I said, I can't put them on the page. I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know if it's real or not. I don't know what's going on. As it turns out later, that the stuff that I did say, well, she finally talked me into putting it on the page, and I would say maybe 80% of it was correct.
Well, now that's interesting. Excuse me.
I didn't know what to do.
Well, that's fascinating. So let's take a look at that for a second. When you were looking at the picture, what was your process? How did that happen?
I just looked at it, and then it was like someone was talking to me. All this stuff just started coming into my mind, mm-hmm. And see, it was almost a scary experience.
Well, scary because it was something that you were not familiar with.
I wasn't ready for.
Or that you weren't prepared for, is that it?
I wasn't prepared for, I guess, yes. Because I always thought it was my imagination and an active imagination or something. But this time it didn't seem to be that way. Well, I found out later it wasn't that way.
Well, I think this is very important because there are people that are listening that have kind of synchronistic things like this happen, or they very well may have the exact same thing where they maybe pick up a newspaper and see a picture, and then all of a sudden they get a download of information. So I think this is a couple of things, if you don't mind me sharing my thoughts about this.
I want to learn more about this.
Okay. First off, one of the ways that I worked with crime scenes is to hold a photograph. And I like holding the photograph because I can suss the information. That's called psychometry. I can read the information. But what you were doing, you weren't holding the photograph. You were actually looking at it, which is, in our technological age, even more exciting, allowing your brain to access the information that was coming from that dead person. Now, it could have actually been that you were communicating with the deceased, or you were tapping into what we could call the Akashic records, or the actual event itself. Now, when you were given this information, were you shown certain scenes, or was it just dialogue? I'd like to hear what you saw as well as what you heard.
There was only one thing that I really saw. Everything else was just like words. Well, the main thing that tipped me off on this was someone posted on the thread. I think she put something like, I'm just going to use this name, Simpson, a road named Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that, and I heard something yell at me, no, Samson. And I
Samson, interesting.
And I typed on there, no, Samson. Now, these aren't the right words. I can't remember what the names of the road was at the time. And I put in no, Samson. And the person that was familiar with the case said, yes, Jim, you're right, because Samson is the name of the road that the airport was on, and they found the car or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. But that was just a yell. That was just a yell in my mind.
Well, that's impressive, because I think that when there's emotion that comes from that information, then you are definitely tapping into either the person that has passed or someone that wants you to have that information. You know, it's one thing to actually just tap into the information. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to a database. I'm interested in this murder. I have an intention to collect some information. Let's go into the ethers and see what we can get. Or it's the intention that you have to help someone. Having been a law enforcement officer, as you have for so many years, the powers that be know that your intention is to help. So there very well may have been someone that picked up on your cue to find information and was available to assist you in that. So I think that's marvelous.
Well, that explains a lot. But then the other things were just things coming into my mind, like the guy shows up at a bar. It's like someone was telling me, well, I guess it's probably someone was actually telling me this stuff. Mm-hmm. But then the one thing that popped in was it seemed like I did see a waitress, and I was told then that the waitress knows a lot of information, but she's not involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think back, and I'm thinking that maybe there was like a movie or something being played there where I saw the waitress.
That's exactly right. And you know what? Excuse me. Some of this information that comes in these movie forms is probably because you are in this work day after day. You know, you're really invested in the whole paranormal experience. When I was working for years ago, when I was doing some volunteer work for James Van Praagh, his assistant handed me a letter. And I didn't know what she was handing it me, and she just winked at me and she said, do something with this. And I opened up, and there was a picture of a guy, but I didn't pay any attention to it. What surged through my body was a movie. And I saw these two characters, what they looked like, and various aspects of their relationship to this person in the actual letter, how they had murdered him, that one would be there would be someone that would turn state's evidence against him, and the other one would drink himself to death. I mean, it just rolled out like an old-time movie, and it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. And I went and called the DA down in Georgia to ask him or to talk to him about it, because it was a homosexual rage murder.
Wow.
Yeah. And he took me incredibly seriously, because I gave him pieces of information from that movie that he said no one else would know except the killers, and he knew who the killers were. They just had to find the actual murder weapon. So this is really crucial, Jim. I think you've got another venue here, and I encourage you. And I'm telling everybody that I'll help you out with this too, because I think that you being connected to law enforcement the way you have been, I think this is another venue for you to really explore. Why don't you tell our listeners what happened when you and I were going to work a case together?
Well, I contacted. We were talking maybe about a month ago, and Marla asked me, she said, "Well, do you have any cold cases around where you live?" And I said, "Yeah. As a matter of fact, I can think of a couple." So I contacted the sheriff's department, and I asked about a case that happened a couple of years ago, where a young lady had been brutally murdered. And they said, "We don't know. We're not even going to talk to you. We're not going to deal with a psychic." And so I called the city police department, which I have a few friends in.
And now you have friends there. So you're calling them up and you're saying, "Hey, look, it's me. Trust me," right?
Yes. And I talked to the chief deputy, and he says, "Let me think about it." And that was a month ago, and I guess he's still thinking. So it's still something that people need to realize this stuff's really for real.
Well, I think that these cold cases, they've got nothing to lose. And actually, every time I travel, if I have the time, if I go to a new city or if I'm in a town, just for, whatever amount of time, I'll go to the local police department and I'll just say, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Do you have anything you're stuck on? Do you have anything you want me to take a look at?" Because I have no problem, going in, seeing if there's anything that I can ascertain to help a case that you guys need, some assistance on. Whether they're open to that or not, you know what? I don't really care. I'm a servant, this is the work that I do. So I go in, I offer my services, and it's been pretty interesting, some of the things that have been developing. So I love that this is going on for you, and I bet that some of the listeners are going to be supportive of you in this new endeavor.
Well, I hope so, because it's like I say, it's kind of scary. I didn't want to release this information. I think the main thing was, since I was so new to it, I didn't want to be wrong, or I didn't want this stuff to be out there and
sure
and it be wrong.
Well, that's typical, Jim. Let me just say right there, that's one of the main reasons that a lot of people are terrified to even embrace this work, is being wrong. Excuse me. But if you are in a class situation, if you were working with me in a class situation, the first thing I would say to you is, we are in a safe environment where this is not about being right. This is about feeling what's going on, hearing, sensing, and because you've not been supported in this sort of, unique endeavor, you wouldn't know how things felt. You have to build a muscle. It's kind of like going into the gym for the first time. If somebody walked in and said to a trainer, "I've never been here, I don't know what to do," the trainer said, "Well, it's not about, being right. It's about me showing you a way to do it and what happens to your body in the process."
So I need a mentor.
Yeah, I've had many mentors. I continually, if I had the time and the resources right now, I would be driving all over the country working with various people. I'd work with Joe McMonagle, who's teaching remote viewing back at the Monroe Institute. I'd be down with my old colleague Lynn Buchanan, who trained me as a remote viewer. I love that work, and I love being immersed in all of it. And I encourage the people that are listening to get into development circles so that they have access to mediumship. And there's lots of things to embrace. But being wrong, you have to be wrong. You've got to be wrong. It's not about being right. You just got to say, well, this is what I see, or this is what I hear. Yeah, I'm not right. I'm not right all the time. I had a case in Wyoming I'll try and tell this without giving specific names. I'll have to make some names up here, but because this person, the girl, has never been found. But this was years ago, and I got specific information about one particular person in town, such detailed information. And when I gave it to the FBI, they said, well, yeah, that's all true. We know all of that about this guy. But he has an airtight alibi. And I said, but how can he have an airtight alibi if this is what he said he did after this girl was murdered? And I said, well, he does. We're focusing on the husband. And I said, but it's not the husband. And I was so certain, but they've never been able to pin it on the husband either. So I don't know how that information got crossed in my head, or if it was right and the alibi was just bogus. So sometimes we don't get, feedback. We just have to trust what we are given.
Well, that's what I guess I'm going to have to start doing. So I've been, for years, just thought it was my imagination, and reading into it, or I have part of the story, and I'm just trying to finish it like I'm writing a book. But I guess I am trying to write a book, but I ought to listen to it a little bit more.
Well, there are a couple of ways to do this. I always have a notepad in front of me, and especially when I sit with a client, and dead people show me stuff all the time, and I will draw what the room looks like. I will draw what a person looks like. I'll just take notes, and I allow my mind to almost go blank, as though it was a movie screen itself. Just so I can get all of the information. And even dreams, Jim, are so important. I keep an iPhone beside my bed just so I can, wake up, if I can see, the buttons well enough to push a recorder so that I can recall some of the things that are happening in the dreams.
Right.
So these are things you need to, we all need to practice.
Well, being a paranormal investigator, I have plenty of recorders laying around the house, so I ought to do that.
Well, yeah, and, the whole investigation of the curiosity between the living and dead is something that I would like to shed some light on for our listeners. I wouldn't do this work if I didn't have corroboration and evidence on a day-to-day basis of deceased loved ones and the fact that their consciousness survives death. It is my intention to bridge heaven and earth the very best I can, and I'm hoping to work in the near future with Dr. Eben Alexander and his. He's working. Dr. Alexander has, written that book about his near-death experience, but he's also working with a company called Sacred Acoustics, and they just did their first course in Charlottesville, and there's going to be an online 4-session webinar that's coming up if people are interested in that. And Dr. Alexander is working with this group in order to help the brain entrainment so that people can also access various levels. Because coming back from a near-death experience when you have seen heaven is something that you want to share. And I, too, want to share how other people can access communicating with their loved ones. So I hope to be doing that in the future.
That sounds exciting. Yeah, and Dr. Alexander's book, that's Proof of Heaven, right?
Yes, it's Proof of Heaven, and the Sacred Acoustics site is sacredacoustics.com for those people who are interested in the webinar. And, there's been a lot of work that I did when I was at the Monroe Institute, accessing other levels of consciousness. And, we might want to talk about some of those paranormal things like aliens and UFOs, too.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen a UFO? Jim?
Yes, I have. It was a 4th of July. Now, alcohol was involved, but there wasn't a lot of it. Maybe only a beer or two.
Wait a minute. What were you drinking? Let's get the name of that alcohol out there.
Just Miller Lite bottles.
All right.
And light beer doesn't really work.
Okay.
But my wife at the time and 2 of my friends or her friends too, we were sitting back on their back porch, and we were just sitting back there talking. They lived next to a little river near where we lived, and just looking up. I was looking up at the sky. I don't think I'd passed out. I was looking straight up in the sky, and I saw this triangular airship, I guess, slowly moving across the sky. But the thing is, it wasn't point first. It was the flat side. It was
the what side?
The flat side of
of
the triangle.
Okay.
That's what was leading. That was the front of this thing.
And
looked up at it, and it was blocking out. I watched it for a little bit, and then I saw it actually blocking out stars.
Where was this?
You mean the town or state or what?
Yes.
It was in Illinois. It was in a little town called Mahomet, Illinois, and since it was pitch black, I couldn't tell how high it was or anything. But he was a pilot in the Air Force, and he was saying, at first I said, well, maybe it's a flight of jets in formation. He says, no, because it's blocking out the stars. I said, well, yeah, you're right. And also the formations usually fly with the point of the triangle first. But he's like I say, he used to be a pilot in the Air Force, and he had never seen anything like this. And we watched it until it went over on the other side of the house. And I don't know why we didn't get up and walk through the garage to the front of the house and watch it the rest of the way.
Interesting.
But that was mine. That was
well,
maybe,
you
6,
speak of a
7 years
triangle. You speak of that triangle. Of course, you're familiar with the Phoenix Lights and all of that. That
right.
I would really be curious. Did you guys measure or get any kind of stats on how big that might have been?
No, because like I said, it was so pitch black. I had no idea how high it was. I couldn't see the outline until it passed. It went through or went underneath the stars and stuff. So did anything happen to you guys afterward? Did you sense anything? Did you feel differently? Did you have any rashes? No.
Nothing like that.
We just opened up another beer. Whenever we just talked about it.
Well, speaking of UFOs and alcohol, I was not interested in UFOs. I had read Whitley Strieber's Communion in 1987, and I was deeply moved by that. And I hoped someday that I would meet him. And of course, I did in 2006. But in 1997, when I was still working with Van Prague, we went to Sedona, and we were taken out into a ranch area. We were in a van. There were 8 of us, and we were there specifically to see UFOs. And I was just a smart ass. I was like, yeah, how are we going to communicate with them, tin cans and a string, I was just being belligerent, and that was my way back then of being nervous. And we get out there, and we are given this Russian 2-level night vision gear from Robert Meyer, who is basically running this excursion out into the desert. And we saw a formation of clouds. It was a clear night with there was a moon, and this formation of clouds in the shape of a triangle, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 clouds, moved right over us. And we thought, well, that's really odd. And then it circled us. And he said, well, now it's time for you to look up there with your night vision equipment and see what you see behind the clouds. And I'll be daggone if I didn't see what people refer to as, the dome and the skirt. It was the classic saucer dome and skirt that it's been depicted everywhere. I actually scratched the surface of the lens just to make sure a little picture wasn't stuck on it. And I was so blown away, and I'm talking, and I'm like, look, and Robert says, yes, well, Marla, that happens to be a gull wing. We call those gull wings. And I said, no, it's a freaking flying saucer. But when I looked back, it had flipped on its side. It was like it was mooning me. And it looked like a lifesaver. it looked just like a lifesaver, like the hole in the middle was black, so that meant that it didn't have anything in it. It was space, and it confounded me. I do not remember what happened in the desert that night. The next thing I remember, James and I walking into the hotel where we were staying, and we went straight to the bar. To this day, I still have no recall of what happened after what we saw.
It's funny though. I'm trying to remember what after we did talk about this, noticing it and trying to figure out what it was. I don't really remember what we did after that, but I don't think that I'm sure I don't have. Well, I don't know now if I had a lost time experience there or anything. I really don't. I don't remember, but I really remember seeing this object up in the sky.
Well, I think a lot more people are having these experiences, and as I said before, the veil between the living and the dead is thin, and I think it's important for us to remember that it's my experience. Other people haven't had this, but I need to share that my belief system around this, that we have lived many times and that we've died many times. I've had numerous regressions with Dr. Brian Weiss as well as Dick Sutphin, and those regressions and those experiences have, they've unleashed something inside of me that if any of our listeners have the opportunity to work with those men or go to a Brian Weiss seminar or have a regression, you have the experience of understanding that you have lived before in a different body and that you've died many times. And that might take away some of this fear, which people live with every day. They're absolutely terrified of death. And what are your feelings about that, Jim? Are you squirrely about that?
No, I believe in reincarnation. I have never had any type of past life regression. I would love to. I'm not scared about something like that. I would actually like to be looking forward to something like that, because that's always amazed me ever since I read it was The Search for Bridie Murphy, which I believe ended up being not a hoax, but it was the young girl actually knew somebody that had told her stories that she was actually able to put together into something that she said was her past life. I think that was for Bridie Murphy.
Are you familiar with Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss? Have you read that?
No, ma'am.
Well, it's actually it's the book that if Carl Jung could prove any of his theories, this is the kind of theory that Brian Weiss basically proved in past life regressions. And that book in itself is the cornerstone of Brian's work. He was a psychotherapist and worked at Yale and Columbia, and he had this woman come into his office on a regular basis who was having these dramatic experiences. And they are documented in the book Many Lives, Many Masters, and that was probably 9 books ago with Brian, and he has dedicated his life to this. And, if anybody is listening and they're interested in that, he certainly is the person that I would recommend over anyone and their books to really get into the possibility of what this all means and how it resonates into the consciousness.
I guess I'll be hitting Amazon tonight after the show.
Yeah, his last book, he and his daughter wrote, called Miracles Happen, and it's a lovely book of many of the most incredible past life regressions that his clients and students of his from all these many, many years that he's been doing this work have written. It's just a great piece, and I think that in my experience with having met Eben Alexander and interviewing him for Dreamland, and his now trying to share this with I have other friends from the Monroe Institute who are branching out and developing this programming. Karen Newell and Kevin Cossey of Sacred Acoustics. They are, they're trying to help people access parts of their brain so that they too can have these altered experiences of heaven and other things. So,
well, you mentioned a couple times the Monroe Institute. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Monroe Institute is and what they do?
Well, the Monroe Institute has been developing programs with being able to access different levels of consciousness. And some of their programs have been, the ones that I've experienced are just incredibly, they're just stellar. There was the Lifelines program where we go in and we actually find these so-called ghosts that you all have been researching. And some of them don't know that they're dead. Some of them do know, and they enjoy being dramatic and sucking off the energy of the living. And some of them are too terrified to move on. They don't have loved ones that they feel that they can go see. They don't recognize that the light or that there is a greater consciousness that they can move into, and they've stayed trapped. So I'm like a nightmare for people who have a ghost in their hotel. I'll go in and talk to the ghost and get them to move on.
Yeah, well, that's good. now, some of them don't want to move on. Some of them don't want to move on.
Well, I think
why would that be?
Well, I the only thing that I can think is, in my experience, is that they're frightened. That they're frightened. They have, for whatever reason, not embraced moving on. And I can't speak necessarily for them, but sure. It's been my experience that once I get into communication with them, and I open up, and we're all capable of doing this, opening up portals of light for people, and you encourage them to move in, that there is more life for them, that this existence, being earthbound, has its limits. There's only so many people you can scare. So, part of that program in Lifelines was actually tapping in and also rescuing people from situations like 9/11 or tsunamis or places where they did not even know that they were stuck. Running into somebody for whatever reason who had a car accident alongside of the road and they were still underneath the car. And I found myself in front of them and having a conversation with them. And he was a Red Sox fan, and he wanted to get back to his family, and it was dinner time, and I basically had to inform him that he had died and that he would be able to meet other relatives if he were to come with me, and we moved to another level. So that's one of the programs. And one of the other programs that I absolutely loved was X27, taught by some of these great facilitators. And X27 was exploration of a consciousness that is pretty far out there. And I had, as well as my compatriots in the class with me, we all had some very unique experiences with other beings on another frequency. And would you be interested? I'm kind of like dancing around this. Are you interested in me telling you one of these stories?
Heck yeah.
Okay.
I do have a question in chat, but we'll go to after you're done with the story.
Okay, great. The level that they shot us out in, this is, of course, you're listening to these frequencies and you're in a program and they're basically guiding you, and they thrust your consciousness out into another state, and you allow yourself to be in the darkness and you request communication from an energy or another life form that would like to talk to you. And I saw this beautiful gold sphere that had sort of tentacles coming out of it. It wasn't like an animal like an octopus, but it was tentacles that were like cords, and at the end of the cords there was something gold, and they put those gold things on my hands, and I was shot into this gold world. And they wanted to communicate with me. And I said, well, as long as you all cover yourselves, if you're critters and bugs in some sort of form that I don't know what to do with, I would appreciate if you would wear hoods. And they were all hooded. But we had a lovely conversation. They asked me what it was like to be on Earth and what are the problems and how difficult it is or what the greatest joys are. And they said that they are 28 to 32 degrees southwest of Orion. So when I was finished with my experience, I went in and did the debrief with the other students in this class, and 3 other people had an experience with an octopus-shaped intelligence, and we all met. We all met with a group or a council of beings, but they got to see them. They were de-hooded, so to speak. I wasn't ready for that. But it was fascinating to have other students have similar experience that I did.
Now, where did they say, where were they from? Where did they say they were from?
28 to 32 degrees, something like that, southwest of Orion. So that's what they told me, and then, of course, they had actually told someone else in my group that they were from Sirius, the dog star.
Right, and I did a little research on that as much as I could. I couldn't find a star map that would actually give me, calculations how far one's from the other. But the Betty and Barney Hill story.
Oh yes.
Abduction. Now they gave her a map, or she saw a map on a wall, and she copied it down. And people have looked at it, and they've come up with that these aliens, or whatever they were from Zeta Reticulon 1. Either Zeta Reticulon 1 or Zeta Reticulon 2. Sounds like Star Trek. I remember hearing it on Star Trek. But I think, what I can tell from the star chart, they're all fairly close. That Sirius, Orion, and Zeta Reticulon, they're all kind of close in that same area.
Well, and the Palladians, the Arcturians, I mean, I'm in constant contact with people that are having some form of communication with these kinds of energies. I found Brian DeFlores, who is this artist with LightQuest International. I interviewed him for Dreamland a couple of years ago, and he is downloading this sacred geometry that basically has this amazing resonance in people's minds and hearts. I think this is the wave of the future, and I think that, in some of the work that I've done, I just had my brain, I had some people come to me and have my brain analyzed while I was working, and some of the energies, some of us who are doing this work are tapping into the energies of Einstein, Tesla. Who knows what some of these frequencies are that come in, but when we give the information, while there is a monitor there, they're apt to recognize what some of this information is from. And there are people that are studying this right now with people like me, and I find it fascinating that hopefully Steve Jobs will get a hold of me and, give me some sort of new iPad or something that I can sell to somebody.
You got to ask.
But the consciousness of these incredible individuals is still active. And, we have to think about these wonderful music masters and writers and people are channeling this information. And just in the Bible, people didn't stop talking, God didn't stop talking to people when the Bible was over. He is still, or the consciousness of God is still giving prophecy, downloads, visions People are getting visions every night and calling me and telling me about them. So these things are happening.
And you bring up the Bible, talking about UFOs and all this stuff, and you have so many mentions in the Bible about the spinning wheels in the sky and people coming down out of the spinning wheels and talking to them and stuff. You really got to. I have the mind where you got to think about it. You can't just say, "Bull." That's not a UFO. That's that was God coming down. Well, whose God was it? I mean, you got to think outside the box and all this stuff.
Well, it's been going on for years, and thank God for Ancient Aliens and, my friends William Henry, and then there's Graham Hancock and all of those people who are pulling in this information of archaeological stuff as well as and the great masters. You may remember that I interviewed Claire Henry, William Henry's wife, who has been working with the angels, and she just made this beautiful book called Sacred Reflections. And in some of these masters, they have actually drawn UFOs and what that actually means to the masters, and those incredible art pieces that have all of that.
Exactly.
We need to pay attention to this and allow that resonance to come in. There's another thing. I don't mean to sound woo-woo about this, because there are the old New Age conversation, and I do not consider the work that I do New Age. I think that New Age is an old terminology, but there are frequencies in sound and in the earth that we need to tap into for more access. And some of that comes in the form of crystals. And crystals are, they're geometric patterns. They hold information. Some of the listeners may be very familiar with, silicon dioxide, which is basically the quartz that, Silicon Valley is developing in order to store information on quartz, on silicon quartz. So there is something to be said for, I think it's pronounced piezoelectric frequencies that are in these crystal pieces. And I've worked with a number of pieces, and each one of them has their own frequency. And I think that this is something that we're going to be exploring even more, what crystals do to people, how they access different chakra systems, how they open up the heart chakra. I fell in love, this sounds so strange, but I fell in love with a rock called kunzite. Does that sound like a name of a book? I fell in love with a rock named kunzite. But
I can see it.
It's actually this incredible frequency that promotes this love and abundance in a way that rose quartz has never accessed for me before. So I'm exploring lots of these things, and I encourage our listeners to do the same. I fell in love with a rock named kunzite. It's really funny.
It is. Well, a little bit ago, I had someone in the chat room, Amelia, asked me if you know how to rid someone of a psychic vampire. Do you know what she means by that?
Well, psychic vampire is a combination of things. We could have somebody in the workplace just being so negative and spinning with their own mental mess that they're a vortex and they're pulling to them all sorts of negative things. I think the first thing that I would say to Amelia is boundaries. Boundaries, internal boundaries where you keep yourself contained, and external boundaries where you don't take anybody else's stuff on. The psychic vampire, so to speak, if you are allowing people to communicate with you, if you're putting yourself in places where there's frequencies that are uncomfortable for you, you're opening yourself up to that. So I would say to Amelia, boundaries.
Boundaries. Okay.
Boundaries.
That no doubt will that'll work. Is that okay? She says
what
okay.
Else?
Thanks. So I guess that'll cover it. She says thank you.
Sure.
And you're talking about I got to start wrapping up here. This went pretty quick. You're talking about the crystals holding energy and creating energy and stuff. Well, there's all the stones that they say hold in energy for the paranormal, to hold in spirits. But that's where they get their power. And Illinois is just a huge. There's more limestone. I don't know the facts here, but there's a lot of limestone here in Illinois, and that's supposed to hold in a lot of energy, and it's pretty cool.
Each different place. I mean, when I went to Brazil, I've never been in an environment like that where the quartz. I don't know how much quartz is in actually the soil there, but the frequency is so high that it really does disturb people when they land. I landed in Brasilia, the capital. People that I happened to be with reacted in various ways. They got very some were agitated, some got ill, some found a tremendous sense of peace. People don't pay enough attention to where they go. You can walk into someone's apartment and you can feel that something's off in there. You can even feel the conversation or the anger that was there before. When I walk into a house, I mean, I read houses. I walk in and I can feel the conversations of the people that have lived there, 2 different years, 2 different decades before, 2 different owners before. Those pieces of information lay in the ethers. And, one of the ways to clear a house is, by fire. You basically, put Epsom salts and a little bit of alcohol and take a pan of fire around the house and clear some of that energy out. Some people use sage, but frequency is one of the best ways to do it. Playing music of a high resonance, playing music can also clear a space. So I just suggest, people pay attention. And also clear off your etheric body. Take salt baths. Change the ion frequency to something that rids your etheric body so that you're cleared off.
Yeah. Well, and also just keeping a clean house.
Yeah, clean house.
Not having it cluttered.
Not having it cluttered, absolutely. You know what? A little bit of Clorox goes a long way. TSP, one of the things that you can wash your walls with. But if you're moving into a house and you're questioning the energy in there, wash the walls. Make sure that you wash the floors. You rip up the carpeting. You can clear a house and keep any kind of negative energy out of that by actually, as you said, cleaning the house.
And the TSP, which to folks out there, is trisodium phosphate. It can be found at your local Home Depot in the paint department as a powder and also a liquid form. So, and it works wonders. It works wonders. Well, Marla, I am running out of time tonight.
Well, thank you, Jim.
And I want right now I want to make sure that I can have you on again.
I'd love that. And people who are interested in working with me and would like a little bit of a discount off of my regular 1-hour fee, just mention your show and go to MarlaFrees.com, fill out the form, make sure you leave your phone number and that you have listened to us. And I would love to work with you in the next couple of months. So thank you, Jim. And, of course, we will continue this Paranormal Geek conversation.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I'll off the air, I want to get your address, and I want to send you a Paranormal Geek book.
I'd love that. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate all of you who have tuned in. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marla. You have a great evening.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, folks. I hope you had a good time. This was really good. I really enjoyed this talk with Marla. She's a very down-to-earth person. Great. I love this show, and I can't wait to get her on again. Next Tuesday, our guest is going to be Jim Vieira. He is a specialist in the ancient mounds here in the United States, ancient giants that back in the 1800s, late 1800s, they kept finding skeletons for. And a representative from the Smithsonian Institute would come up and say, "Ooh, look what you found. We will take those to the Smithsonian Institute." They would take them, and now the Smithsonian has no record of ever having them. As a matter of fact, I tweeted the Smithsonian Institute yesterday and got a answer back from them saying that they have no record of them and to contact the I forgot what department they told me to check. But so they're saying they never did have them. They never did ever get any of these giants. So you just wonder where they're at. Okay, guys, I want to thank you again for tuning in and for being here in chat. It's been a great night, and I invite you all back next Tuesday, and we're going to close out with some with a little bit of music here. Y'all have a great night. Thank you very much again for tuning in.
Everybody has a song that makes them cry. I live my life just learning how to sing on, so I don't feel my sorrow, wishing I would die. 'Cause baby, when it's over, it's never really over. Everybody has a question in their eyes. I live my life just learning how to word it to the wise, so I can ask of life whose dreams I reconcile. 'Cause baby, when your heart beats, never what your mind is, and I did.